Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and these are the 10 crowdfunding games that I am most excited for. Now, if you're wondering what's going on with the to back or not to back is still happening as a series, just not this week. For those who do or don't know what's going on, the very short version is I recently accepted a job at GameFound, had a video with that going up Wednesday, and yes, in the comments there were people who were wondering and or had opinions on whether to back or not to back should or should not continue. It is continuing, and we'll figure all that out as we go, but for this week there were only 4 or 5 campaigns to go over, and none of them ending in the next week, and usually when that happens, I just push it off till next week and bundle it all up together. And for this week, we're going to be going over instead a question I get most commonly on my live streams every Wednesday, which is, which crowdfunding games are you most excited to have arrive? And so I figured it's time to do a video on it, because in the last video on the subject was a very long time ago, and so these are the 10, or technically 12, crowdfunding games that I am most excited to have arrive. And we'll figure all the other stuff out next week. But in any case, let's go ahead and start this off. Starting off the bat with the two exceptions, the 2 extra bonus ones, because there always are bonus ones. And also, by the way, I really couldn't limit it to even remotely close to 10. I actually had a full list of like another 10 I wanted to go through, which I'm saving for a rainy day, of the 10 next most excited crowdfunding campaigns. Don't know when that will go up. We'll figure that one out. It depends on the next time we don't have a to back or not to back. But with that, starting off the bat with the first exception, which is Mosaic. And Mosaic is an exception, a thrown-on one, only because it's so soon to actually arriving. This one I even had a chance to play the physical copy at Gen Con. Physical copies have started to go out to others, and so I expect my copy to show up very shortly, and I'm very excited for when it does. But Mosaic is one that I am absolutely excited to see it arrive. And more than that, by the way, this is one where I was excited to watch the Dice Tower review of this one, because it was across the board a whole bunch of high ratings, like 8.5s and 8s and 9s or whatever it was. I have to double check the ratings, but it was all high ratings over on Dice Tower, which I was very excited to see, because Mosaic for a long time has been a game that I had a high opinion of, and that I knew that there have been people who played this game who were like, it's not that great, don't know why people like this, don't know why any of the content creators like the game, and I'm like, you know what? I mean, that question is still valid. There's just like 3 or 4 more people over at Dice Tower who like it as well. But in all honesty, this is one of those weird things of being a content creator, where sometimes you have an opinion, and if your opinion goes against the grain, it is nice to have further validation that you're not the crazy one who played the game wrong, or didn't really think about balance, or this or that. But ultimately, when it comes to Mosaic, I enjoy this game. I've enjoyed Mosaic every single time I've played it, and that includes my most recent play over at Gen Con as well. And yes, it is nice to see others enjoying it as well. I do not think it'll be a game for everyone. Absolutely not. No game is, and this one even more so, if only because of the fact that, again, there have been people who dove into this one who did not feel it was for them. But Mosaic is a tableau building game of taking 1 of 8, I'm pretty sure it's 8 actions every single turn, 8 simple, direct, to the point actions that are going to help you build out your tableau in one way or another. Whether you're trying to grab more ideas, whether you're trying to generate resources, whether you're trying to grab population, you're constantly building out your tableau in this game in a way that is incredibly rewarding, in a way that's incredibly rewarding to do so. Everything you do helps you, and the question is, which combination of things that help is going to be the thing that drives you forward the most? Is population going to help you the most? Because population is a catch-all for all the resource generation, which can really help you, plus it's necessary for all the cities you're going to build, so there's a nice trade-off there. What about the area control? There could be a lot of points on the map if you position yourself well for area control. Or maybe just go heavy on technology, spending your ideas to get the technology you need, or taxing, or military, or government. There are so many pathways towards victory in this game. There are so many actions you can take, and they're all good. The only question in Mosaic is which action is going to be the best at any given time, which combination of taking an action is going to result with you having the win at the end of this 1.5 to 2 hour long experience. I really enjoy Mosaic. I find it accessible, I find it rewarding. To me, it effectively feels like a Terraforming Mars light. It has that same style of tableau building in a faster time frame, not nearly as much depth or reward to the experience, but half the playtime, and so I can't really say no to that. I really enjoy this game, very excited for this one, and very excited for it to arrive. The only reason it's number 12 over here is because technically it's basically on the cusp of arriving, and that means there's an opportunity for me to sneak in an extra title. Speaking of sneaking in an extra title, we have Wild Assent Lavon Rising. Wild Assent Lavon Rising is to be my next extra title over here, and that's because of the fact that Wild Assent Lavon Rising is technically, well, not technically, it's a standalone, not a standalone, it is an expansion to Wild Assent, and I already have Wild Assent, and so since I already have Wild Assent, do I really need to have Lavon Rising as well? And the short answer is yes, that's why it's still here, but because it is additional content for a game I already have, technically I am a drop less excited about it compared to other games on this list. That's probably not true. I'm probably just as excited about it, but again, it is an opportunity for me to sneak another game onto this list, and so I'm going to do so with Lavon. By the way, to those people who occasionally ask, why don't you just call it a top 12? Why do you feel the need to sneak a game on? Why don't you just do what you want to do? The answer is I am doing what I want to do. This is what I want to do. It's just the way I want to do it. But in any case, Lavon Rising from Lazy Squire Games gave more story to Wild Assent. It took Wild Assent and it gave more story to it, more content to the game, more of an interactive adventure. I really enjoyed what it did to Wild Assent. Wild Assent is already a game I thoroughly enjoyed, and Lavon Rising, from the prototype that I had a chance to play, only made it even more so. Wild Assent Lavon Rising is just a great... I love Wild Assent, and this is another, by the way, another example of a time where my opinion might be higher than the general public's, because Wild Assent over on Board Game Geek I think has like a 7.2 or something like that, and for me it's a 5 out of 5, but I think part of that, or a big part of that I think, is because of the fact that I was in the fortunate position of when I was learning how to play the game, I had direct access to the designer, which unfortunately did bias me towards the game, because the rulebook that I did say in my review you do have to struggle through, at the end of the day, for some people that struggle did not have another direct call for help on the other end of it, and that may have impacted some people's experience. Now there will also be those who just think, no, I actually understood how to play, I just didn't like the game. Again, all things possible. For myself, I really like Wild Assent. I really enjoy this game. I really enjoy the leveling up, the building. This, to me, is such a ridiculously fun experience that I have such a good time with it, and I just thoroughly enjoy the experience that Wild Assent gives me. I like the leveling up. I like the sense of progression. I like the characters. I like the variability. I like everything going on in this game, and Lavon Rising just gave me more of it. And so yes, I don't know when this one shows up. I'm not in a rush for it. I have my other copy in the meantime. But overall, the amount of content for this game is way more than I need, but the amount of content for this game, it is a shorter campaign, and as a shorter campaign, it is the kind of thing that I am more likely to be able to go through properly. Overall, I really enjoy this game, loving the new box art over here, loving the miniature sculpts are off the chart, incredible. Everything here is absolutely amazing, but I am very, very excited for Wild Assent Lavon Rising. Just very excited for this one. The Choose Your Own Adventure, everything going on in this one. This is one, and many of these campaigns, by the way, many of these campaigns as we go through them, or some of these campaigns, will have the opportunity for you to late pledge. Feel free to check those out if you want. But yeah, overall, this one, I'm very excited for it. It's amazing. The miniature sculpts, the progression, the characters, the workers you have, the items you have, everything in this game is just thoroughly enjoyable, at least for myself. From there, we go into the actual top 10 list, starting off, and this is, in some degree, ordered based on how excited I am. I say to some degree only because in many cases, I just had a hard time choosing what I was most excited for, because I'm so excited for so much of it, and that just made it hard to choose. So take it with a grain of salt that this is roughly the order of excitement, but honestly, I could probably swap half of these in different directions and not realize, because I'm just excited for all of these for different reasons in different ways. Although number 10 is likely actually number 10, with Six Siege, the board game from Mythic Games. Six Siege is from Mythic Games, is a tactical version of inspired by Rainbow Six or whatever it is, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, inspired by, or whatever you want to call it. They had specific terminology around how they titled it, but this is a 2-player head-to-head, and technically a 2 to 4 player, but we only played a 2-player. It feels like a head-to-head game in which you take control of different sides and you try to tactically plan out your invasion of the area, and both players are playing asymmetrically. Different equipment, different teams, different setup, different objectives as far as how they proceed, and you're playing through this tactical game of breaking, of putting charges on walls, of exploding things inwards, of repositioning doors and barriers and cameras and drones and all these things as you try to take out your opponents, you try to get the drop on them. This was an incredibly well done game, incredibly well done. I think this has the possibility to be Mythic Games' best game from the games. Trying to think through what I've played and what they have coming. To me, this is possibly one of their best games. It is one, and the only reason it's this high on the list, the only reason it's this far back, is because it is one that I do feel I'm going to play less, just because of it being a 2-player head-to-head skirmish game, which for me doesn't hit the table quite as much as I generally like. But overall, this one is absolutely fantastic. The way I remember playing this prototype, and for most of the games in this list, it looks like for all the games in this list, they are prototypes I've played, which makes sense. I tend to be more excited about things that I know I like, as opposed to things that I hope I'll like. But overall, Six Siege, it was such a good experience. I know many others who had a chance to dive into this one who absolutely loved it. It was tactical, it was variable, it had so much content to it, it had so many ways to approach the game, ways to play, ways to draft your teams. There's a lot going on, possibly to the degree of being overwhelmed, especially if you you got all the content for it, which could be a problem. But just the general setup and tactical approach you had to the game maps and the game scenarios you were playing with, there were a few rules that I found a little fiddly. The whole concept of Overwatch and different floors that were abstracted in the game, that didn't work quite as well for me. It felt like a little bit more rules overhead versus tactical payoff than I was interested in. But overall, across the board, I really enjoyed Six Siege, and I'm very strongly looking forward to this one from Mythic Games. It's, again, potentially has the possibility to, for me, I think this one's going to be one that rivals Rum and Bones in my collection, but Rum and Bones being a little bit more on the dice chucking side, and Six Siege being far more on the tactical side. Yes, with dice chucking as well, but this one just feels so good. It feels so good to get the drop on your opponent, to plant a breach on a wall, to explode in from the other side, and then to drop a little flash grenade in there, blast in the room, having someone charge in, and then scattering a bunch of dice in their faces, taking them out. It feels like that when you're playing this game. It actually feels like that when you're playing the game, although actually feels is probably a loose terminology. For me, it had that sense of accomplishment and sneaking up and tactical approach that was just so rewarding. So rewarding. Six Siege from Mythic Games. Absolutely fantastic game. Number 9 is going to be Arydia, The Paths We Dare Tread from Far Off Games. Arydia, The Paths We Dare Tread. And again, this is another one where we start, already at this point, we start moving into anything in the next, like, 7 I could mix and match and rearrange, and they'd all be valid. The only reason Arydia is this far back is because it is a big box campaign game. It's an investment that I will have to mentally get into. And while we have some others on this list like that, we have at least one other that falls in that category. Arydia has enough going on that I am concerned that it will arrive and then sit on my shelf for 6 months as I figure out how and when to play it. Now granted, I've played it already, and so I do know how to play it, which significantly lowers the burden of entry, and it's possible I'll play this one as well because of the fact that over on Twitch and the Camp Co-op link down below, I've been going through more campaign games, diving into a whole bunch of things from Gloomhaven to Paperback to Roleplay Adventures, and using this as an opportunity to dive more into campaign games, but I still have a backlog. I still have Oathsworn, I still have more Wild Assent, I still have a dozen other games that I could be diving into. There's so many games that I have as far as campaign games I need to catch up on. So when Arydia shows up, maybe it gets pushed to the front of the list, maybe not, I don't know. I know that I liked it enough that it probably should. Arydia has a degree of different layers of world building going on. You have the high level map going on over here, this little progression across the world. You have the walking into individual encounters you'll set up on the board, and then from there into a dungeon crawl experience. After you go through a bit of a choose your own adventure, you'll then further dive into a bit of a dungeon crawl, all while building up your character, all while trying to figure out your strike patterns and try to figure out how to most efficiently take down enemies. Arydia, from the same creators who brought you Xia, Legends of Adristus. Is it Xia? I think it's Xia. I'm pretty sure I'm finally saying it right. I used to say Xia, then I said Xia, and there's Xia. I think it's Xia. But anyways, Arydia is from the same creators, and it is such an intricate world. It is incredibly well done. It is a game I'm very excited for. It has a high degree of RPG element. You can play it solo, you can play it cooperatively, you can play it whatever. It's just well done. If you're looking for a game that will pull you in, that will loop you into the characters, that will loop you into the world building, that will loop you into the story and the choose your own adventure sense of how you can move from one pathway to another as far as how you encounter them and you talk to them and you find that person over there, it has such a degree of, and again, we only played a prototype and it was so intricate even just in the prototype that I cannot wait to see the final game and the content for this game. It was such a good experience that I'm very heavily looking for. Arydia, The Paths We Dare Tread. Number 8 is Beast. Beast from Studio Midhall, which is a 1 versus many, or technically, 1 versus many, or 1 versus 1, depending how you play it, whatever it is, but character-wise, it's a 1 versus many game in which you're trying to hunt the beast. It's a hidden movement game, which you're trying to track down the beast as the beast wanders across different patterns, trying to stay hidden as much as possible, trying to tactically outwit the hunters as it goes through the experience. Meanwhile, you are trying to hunt it down, you're trying to find it, and you're all asymmetric. There are different beasts with different abilities, there are different hunters with different abilities, and you're trying to figure out how to play through this drafting game, because you're going to be drafting ability cards every round. Ability cards that play out differently depending on who has them, so you're constantly going through this check of, do I want this card? Maybe I do, maybe I want that other card, but if I let you get this card, you as the beast are going to use this to completely crush me. And so you're drafting your actions every single round. You're trying to wander around the map, trying to figure out how to get your specific objectives. The hunter's taking down the beast having certain objectives of what they have to do and to stay hidden and to make sure they actually survive. Overall, this is one that rivals the best hidden movement games I've played. For me, it's Mind Management and The Beast. Those are not The Beast. There's Mind Management and Beast. Is it The Beast? It's Beast, right? Just Beast. I'm doing this correctly. Yeah, Beast. It's Mind Management and Beast as far as the two hidden movement games that I most enjoy, that I would most recommend, that I think are absolutely fantastic. I like hidden movement as a category to begin with, and I think there are other hidden movement games that I would recommend easily. Spectre Ops is great. Sniper Elite is amazing. There are many other hidden movement games that are great, but for me, Beast and Mind Management take the cake as far as being the best hidden movement games out there. Absolutely fantastic game. Very excited for this one to arrive. This is one that will get tabled. It's so good. It's so good. Beast is one of my favorite games. Beast is without question the best hidden movement game I've played. And that's how I felt. That is how I felt, and I say how I felt past tense, only because at the time I hadn't played Mind Management, and now it's Beast is, with the question of Mind Management, amongst the two best hidden movement games I've played. Also, I'm missing the word games over there, but that's either way. But anyways, that's Beast. Beast is my number 8, a solid, incredible game. Very excited, very much looking forward to. At number 7, we have Paperback Adventures, a novel word game for 1 to 2 players. This is one that, as far as the pure mechanical aspects of gameplay, this is probably the one that I am least excited about from these 10. That does not mean I'm not excited about it, not in the slightest. I'm very excited about this one. I'm very excited to dive into Paperback Adventures. I think it'll be an absolutely fantastic game, and it's one that I'm excited for because I think it's one that I'll be able to dive into solo and or 2-player. It has that 2-player aspect, but even if I just dive into it solo, I think it's one that will get tabled easily and frequently. This is a word building game in which you're facing off against an opponent, against an enemy, built primarily as a solo game with a 2-player mode built in as well for those who want it. But for me, this game fixes one of the problems I have with word games, which is the fact that turns can drag on far too long as players search for the ultimate perfect word. Now, the fact that this is a cooperative game, even at 2 players, already partially fixes that, because even when you're taking too long, at least you can all work together and feel like it's a game where you're all invested together, as opposed to being a game where I'm waiting for you to take your turn, and if I help you, then it's weird. You could do that, but then it's just no longer a competitive game. And so just the fact that it's co-op already solves that, and the fact that it's potentially solo or primarily solo solves it even further. I can take as long as I want crafting the perfect word. That's okay. That's my problem. It's my delay. It's my reason to sit there and wait. But overall, this will give me a word building game with a degree of upgrading, a degree of progression, a degree of taking down the monsters as you go through it. I like word building games. I just don't like the way they have been implemented in board games. I shouldn't say don't like. I would say I have problems with the way they have been implemented in board games, including with hardback and paperback, the previous predecessors to this game, which I liked. I did enjoy them, but also moved on from them because of those delays, because of those problems I have with war games. Over here in the case of Paperback Adventures, I think this will give me a high degree of variability, a high degree of content, and overall a thoroughly enjoyable word game which I can play through solo and thoroughly enjoy what this game is doing. I'm excited for this one. I'm eager for it to arrive so I can sit there, and whenever I just have, I don't know, half an hour of just alone time, I can sit there and set up the little word, set up Paperback Adventures and start diving into the process of taking down a creature through building out words. From there, my number 6, that's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. My number 6 is Marvel Zombies. Marvel Zombies, which you might think would be higher on this list, because whenever people ask what my favorite game is that I'm excited for, I usually do answer Marvel Zombies, although that's more because as a campaign that brought in $9 million and 30,000 backers, it is, and had controversies around it, this one is one that has been more recently on my mind. But it's not the highest on this list. In fact, I probably should bump it up a spot. This should probably be 1 spot higher, but then after that, there's things that go higher than this. Let's go ahead and give me 1 second to catch some coffee. But overall, when it comes to Marvel Zombies, that was my number 6. And again, it probably should be like 1 or 2 spots higher. Maybe 2 spots higher, maybe 1 spot higher, but definitely not higher than that. There's 3 that are definitely ahead of this one. You know what? I think I'm going to actually go ahead and move this one 2 spots higher. Just looking at it where it is, I think I am 2 spots higher this one. So we're going to come back to my new number 6, which is 7 Citadel. My new number 6 is 7 Citadel from Serious Pulp, and this is one which I have been looking forward to for a long time, and like Paperback Adventures, I'm looking forward to diving into this one solo. Yes, you can play it 2 players, but no, I probably won't. I say probably won't because there's always a chance. There's always a chance that it does happen. Again, speaking of Camp Co-op, if I'm playing these games over on Camp Co-op, there's a possibility that I do dive into a multiplayer, but past that, this is a game, 7th Continent specifically is a game that I have primarily played solo. And 7th Continent is a game I got rid of because I had 7th Citadel come my way, and now I'm kind of looking back at 7th Continent and wondering whether I should be grabbing another copy of it, because honestly, 7th Continent is an absolutely fantastic game. I should probably grab a copy of 7th Continent again. It's just such a good game. It's such a good experience. We'll have to figure that problem out another time. But in any case, 7th Citadel is a game that is absolutely incredible. It takes, and I'm probably using the word absolutely too many times in this video, let's try to slow that down. Seventh Citadel takes Seventh Continent and for me improves upon the experience by investing me significantly more in the story and by making it almost feel more like a campaign driven game, even though that's not what I'm normally looking for. In the case of Seventh Citadel, it looped me in and invested me enough that I think I am fine with it. Seventh Citadel is one that I really enjoyed. When I played Seventh Citadel, I actually got rid of Seventh Continent because of it, because I was like, these games take so much time and so much investment, I'd rather put that time and investment into Seventh Citadel. Granted, that was when it was supposed to be coming May 2022, and at this point, and that was, by the way, at the time, when they gave that date, people were like, that's way too far out in the future, but at this point, that feels like it's a little bit in the past now, and it should be showing up soon-ish, but soon-ish is still not yet today. Seventh Citadel is amazing. Seventh Citadel had such a degree of all the things I liked about Seventh Continent, but with significantly more investment. Had a degree of choose your own adventure in the narrative, a degree of actual investment in the characters, a degree of having a camp and a settlement where you can actually build up and progress as you slowly moved out from settlement to different adventures while leveling up your group. It turned it into almost a campaign game in a way that you had a higher degree of interaction and investment in the worlds around you, and I really enjoyed it. It had some degrees I didn't feel the need for as much. It had this degree of combat, iterative combat system that I felt was an extra degree of complexity that was unnecessary for the world, but it was fine, and it's not everything's going to be perfect for me in every way, and maybe I'll grow to like that even more as I go through it, but overall, I really enjoy this one, and I'm looking forward to diving into it. I'm looking forward for it showing up so I can sit down and play it. Seventh Continent and Seventh Citadel are games that took the gaming world by storm in terms of what they did, or should I say Seventh Continent took the world by storm in terms of what it did, and from there it's a question of many other games trying to copy or replicate that feeling in different ways. From games like Tainted Grail, to games like Unsettled, to games like Seventh Citadel, all giving you different ways of having that Seventh Continent exploratory feel in a way that invested you in the world, in a way that had just so much story built into it. And Seventh Citadel is, well, Seventh Citadel was amazing. It was amazing, it was incredible, and I'm very highly looking forward to actually having this one show up so I can sit down and play this one. From there, at number 5, we have Agemonia. Agemonia, the other one that I bumped Marvel Zombies in front of, because again, I'm just trying to rethink my own order as I go through things, but Agemonia, and yes, this one is a game, the way I often put Agemonia, it was on Kickstarter roughly the same time as Arydia, and the way I often compare the two games is Agemonia to me is not as good as Arydia, but I think it's the game I'll play more. Sometimes that happens in games where you have a game that is simply more accessible, easier to table, less barriers to entry, less rules, less going on, and Agemonia has all those things. It has less rules going on, it has less complexity, it has less reward for what you're doing, but it was also highly enjoyable to go through it. I really liked Agemonia a lot. The degree of the scenarios they gave us, and they only gave us 3 scenarios to play through as a prototype, but I played through some of those scenarios multiple times because of how much I enjoyed the system in the game. This game was giving me a degree of diving into it, of having different story encounters, of having different options going on as far as trying to figure out what you wanted to interact with in different ways, as the story cards were laid down across the board, as every point had an interaction, as you wandered around, both engaging in a degree of exploratory everything, exploratory discovery, exploratory exploration, I guess, as you try to figure out how to level up your character, how to get the various experience you need, all those different things, as you try to figure out how to keep your character alive, as you choose which options you move forward the game, as far as whether you clear the tree off the pathway, whether you beat down the various enemies around you. There's so many different options in the game, and it really gave you a high sense of exploration, and a sense of exploration that came with a degree of consequence. The first scenario was mostly on rails as it kind of guided you through the game, but even within that there was choice and agency, and you didn't really see everything on your first playthrough. The second scenario, again, to a degree, introducing more aspects, introducing more combat to the experience, but still a little bit on rails, and by the time you hit the third experience, there's a real sense of agency as far as how you progress through the story, as far as what you're going to do to move the pathway forward, and I really liked the system. I thought it was accessible, I thought it was beautiful to look at, I thought it was simple to play and teach, and compelling to play again and re-dive into the same story as. Agemonia is a cooperative game for 1 to 4 players, one that I've played both with others and solo, and enjoyed it both ways. Agemonia is incredibly solid, and one that I'm very much looking forward to diving into when the final game comes through. It is such a good game. Number 4, which by now you know, is Marvel Zombies. Number 4, Marvel Zombies, a Zombicide game. This is Zombicide. This was whatever. This is Zombicide. It's called Marvel Zombies and all that, but it's a Zombicide game, and it feels like a Zombicide game, but it feels like a Zombicide game in a good way. It feels like a Zombicide game in a way that took the next iteration on the system, that took the core game that feels like Zombicide, added enough elements, changed enough elements, not in a way that is perfect for me. There's still aspects of Zombicide that I will miss that they took out over here, but overall, I think what they did with Zombicide is better. In many ways, in many ways, shapes, and forms, including just the sheer variability of the characters you're playing as. You have so many characters, each with their own unique skills. This is no longer a game which you're flipping to the back of the Zombicide rulebook, trying to find those 30 skills that are just distributed differently on different characters. Every single character here, every single character has their own unique skill that they're playing with, their own unique skill tree as they level up, making the characters more compelling, making the characters feel more like who they are. And then because this is zombies, this has the whole aspect of the various back and forth of being able to utilize the characters as abominations and or heroes depending on the mode you're playing as. Whether you're playing as zombie heroes fighting against the various abominations who are just straight up heroes, or whether you're playing as actual heroes fighting against all the various abominations that are zombies, this game has different ways you can approach the game, different ways you can dive into it, and it gave you enough changes to the system, giving you two different gameplay styles, but the same basic concepts, but different gameplay styles as far as how you figure out which mode you prefer, which mode you're going to engage with, and they both were compelling in different ways. I do have my preference. I still prefer playing as the hero mode. Based on having played this game in both modes, I still prefer playing as actual heroes as opposed to zombie heroes, but both were incredible in different ways. And for me, this is easily, from where I played, this is easily my favorite Zombicide game. And this is something I always say whenever I say that, which is I've never been Cult of the New when it comes to the Zombicide experiences. Because when I've played the Zombicide experiences in general in the past, I've always loved Black Plague, and then from there I started playing other ones in the Zombicide experiences. I started diving into them. I had a chance to play 2nd edition and didn't like it as much as Black Plague. I had a chance to play Wild West, and while I'm not still excited for that one to come, and I did back that one, I'm still not as excited about it as I am Black Plague. Black Plague to me has always been the definitive one. Invader didn't take it over, 2nd edition didn't take it over, and Wild West, based on my one play so far, did not take it over. But Marvel Zombies did. This is one that both the IP and the gameplay mechanic changes they made, to me, I think this will be my definitive Zombicide, and while Black Plague is still not going anywhere, still a fantastic game, overall, Marvel Zombies is one that I'm incredibly excited to have this one hit my table. Granted, I think Galactus is probably completely unnecessary, not probably, Galactus is completely unnecessary and over the top, and if you want it, by all means enjoy it, but not something you need to make this game very playable at all, and one that will just get in the way at the end of the day. And that's Marvel Zombies. From there, my number 3 is going to be The Witcher Old World. The Witcher from Go On Board, which is one that, again, very excited for this one. Both the solo mode, which I have not had a chance to play the solo mode, they didn't have that during the campaign, but also just the general competitive mode they had for the game. This is one that I thoroughly enjoyed. I thoroughly enjoyed this one, had a chance to play this one. And this became one of those games that very quickly grew for me from being just a, hey, this is an interesting exploratory game, to this is a game that invests me in the characters, invests me in the world, that has enough deck building that you're going to enjoy. I love deck building in general as a mechanic, and utilizing that deck building in combat as you chain together your attacks was incredibly rewarding and incredibly compelling. It had character growth as you level up your characters in different ways, the different strengths and the things they're going to be good at. It had the high degree of just exploration and monster interactions. You try to figure out who can progress through the game system as fast as possible, getting as many points as possible. It had these points of interaction in which you go through having, forest encounters and city encounters, and you use those to drive you forward across the exploratory aspect of the world. And this is all, like, for me, the only complaints I had about The Witcher were all addressed within the Kickstarter itself. I was like, I want the monsters to be more intricate as opposed to feeling like just a static thing, and the monsters became more intricate. Any complaint, I wanted more variety in the deck building and more variety in the card play, and that's something they added. Every single thing that I wanted out of the system, they added throughout the course of the Kickstarter, and just, for me, this is one that I'm very excited to dive into the solo mode this one, and the solo mode is not the main reason I'm excited for it, but solo mode does make it easier to table. When this one finally does show up and I'm trying to figure out who I have to get to around my table to actually sit down and play it, first of all, plays great at 2 players, plays great at 3 players, so that's great off the bat offhand, have not played it at 4, and then secondly, I plan on learning the solo mode so I can actually dive into this one as fast as possible, because I really liked what this game was doing, and I think it would work well solo. They have the whole Wild Hunt mode. I imagine, based on the game, that it would not be hard to tweak it to be a solo experience that is thoroughly enjoyable, and so I'm very excited for this one. Very, very excited to have The Witcher show up. This is another one. We have some big hitters on this Kickstarter. This is another one that brought in like roughly 8 million once you converted that, or at the time, maybe it's like 7 million. But between this and between 7 Citadel, between Marvel's... 7 Citadel actually didn't do as high, did it? 7 Citadel was high. That's high, but not that high. But between Marvel Zombies, between The Witcher Old World, we have some solid heavy hitters here that did incredibly well, and I'm very excited for this one to show up. It is it was and hopefully is a great game. My number 2 is Encyclopedia. Encyclopedia, which I had a chance to actually break out my prototype a few weeks ago because it's that good. I still play this prototype and still excited for this one to show up. I don't need this one to show up. I have the prototype. I enjoy the prototype, but I am excited for this one to show up. And this is one that, for me, I really enjoy this one. This is such a good game. It is such a good experience that I had a chance to like actually teach this to. Let's give words. I guess to give context. Terraforming Mars has been my favorite game of all time, at least as of recently. And Encyclopedia to me gives me the same feeling as Terraforming Mars. Very different game. Like Mosaic before, very different experiences, but giving me the same feeling as the different tableau I'm trying to build out, the different ways I'm hitting different actions. I really like Encyclopedia quite a bit, and I taught it to somebody else in my group who loves the same games that I do for the most part, and he absolutely loved Encyclopedia. One play in, he was like, this is a very good game, and very excited to play this one again. Encyclopedia was and is a good experience from where I am with this one, and I'm excited for the final game to show up so I can have the final components, plus the various expansion content they have, and the various modules and those things, and so I don't have to play with the prototype anymore, because prototypes are still prototypes, and I want the deluxe version of the game and all that stuff. Encyclopedia, though, the thing that drove this game for me is the fact that every single action you take in the game drives another action. Every single thing feels like it's hitting on multiple counts. You place a piece and you get rewards for the action you're taking, but also for the die you're placing and how you're placing it, and the various experts you've acquired along the way that further enhance that action. Every single thing feels like it's hitting you in multiple places in a good way. It's chaining off different reactions in a way that feels compelling, in a way that feels rewarding, in a way that continues to engage you. And for me, the biggest concern I had was around the replay value of the game, whether it would hold up to 4, 5, 10 plays down the road. And while I don't think I'm yet at 10 plays, I'm well above 5 at this point, and so far it has continued to hold up. The combination of experts in the game and the combination of what other players do and how they react seems to continuously compel me to dive into it again and again and again to try to find that perfect optimization towards the end. I love this game. Absolutely adore the game. I said absolutely again. I really adore the game, and have had a great time playing it both before the campaign itself as well as since the campaign, because I still have the prototype. It's one of like 3 prototypes I've ever really like held onto this long and still continue to play. It is ridiculously good, and I'm very excited for the final version of the game because I mean, this should be lower down this list only because I have the prototype and still play the prototype. But I guess the fact that it's not lower down the list should tell you that I'm still that excited for Encyclopedia. And then lastly, the number 1 is one that, and this before you get to number 1, this is the part of the video where hypothetically there's like 4 campaigns that you're wondering about, you're wondering, what about this game, and what about that game, and what about this one? Like I said already, there are a bunch of other games that I had a hard time choosing this list. There are so many games that I've backed, and there are so many games that fall into the category of just being the games that I am the most excited for them to arrive. And there was a full other list of like another 10 plus videos that another 10 plus games that I am excited for and want to talk about, but at the end of the day, I could barely do 10 on this list. I managed to cram in 12. I will get to the other list at some point, hopefully, maybe 1 or 2 of them. It's like 10 to 20 effectively, but 1 or 2 of them I may arrive before I actually film that, so we'll see. I may have to adjust it, but yes, there are other games. Feel free to comment whatever. I'll try to reply in terms of, what about this game? Well, yes, I am excited about it. What about that one? Not as excited about it. And it doesn't mean I'm not excited, because I'm just trying to pick the ones that really have me very, 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 very excited. That's the word I'm looking for. Very, 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 very excited, which brings me to my number 1, which is Primal the Awakening. Primal the Awakening, which is one that when I played, I want to say late 2020, maybe? How far back was this one? I don't remember. I think it was late 2020. It was around the same time as 7th Citadel, if I recall correctly. I'm not certain anymore, but Primal is one that I adored. This is such a good game, and it's such a good game that I'm hoping holds up, and I'm hoping delivers when it shows up on my doorstep. I'm hoping it delivers the same experience and the same memories and the same everything that I got out of it at the time. It was a great game. It was a game of taking down these giant monsters, but it had a card system that I felt was incredibly rewarding. It was effectively a boss monster, a boss game, a boss fighting game, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It was a boss hunting experience in which you have this boss in this narrow grid and you're just navigating around the boss in a way that to some people saw this and thought it didn't feel intricate enough. And it's entirely possible it does not feel intricate enough, but when you're playing the game, when you're in the game, it felt intricate enough to me. For me, one of my problems I have with these giant maps and trying to have these skirmish games is very often they do feel like you're just trying to close the distance and then hit each other, and Primal skipped that. It had, hey, yes, close the distance and hit each other, but we're going to give you a grid where you have to be mindful of which way the beast is facing and how how to take it down in different ways. And then we're going to give you different characters that are all intricate in what they do, and they all have a degree of progression that, like Wild Ascent before it has a campaign, but a campaign that is not overly long, a campaign that might be like 15 hours, so you can actually go through it, play it, fight the beasts, do what you need to do, rinse and reset. And yes, they gave you one-shots along the way as well, scripted one-shots where you can choose different combinations of cards and characters, and then dive into an experience at a set point in time in case you want more of those one-shot adventures as opposed to the campaign play. But the card play was the thing that intrigued me in this game. The card play combined with the way you build out your character was completely compelling, in the way that it gave you almost a Marvel Champion style feel of card economy, where every card has to pay for the other cards, and so you're constantly choosing what to do, how to actually drive your engine forward, what will combine well with what thing in order to get you to that end goal that you need. And it felt rewarding, it felt compelling. And then learning the beasts along the way, and their reactions, the way they engage with you as they went through different phases of taking them down, different phases of escalation, it gave you a really well done puzzle. The prototype I played only had 2 beasts, and so I can't speak for all the other ones along the way, but those 2 beasts felt drastically different in the ways you have to handle them, and the ways they engage with you. And then you have all the characters to play as, all the escalation. This is one where there is a campaign system, but we didn't have a chance to properly play through the campaign system. It was more singular one-shots in the prototype, but this was so good. I know that Jeremy Howard loved this one. I know that One Stop Co-op Shop loved this one. I know many people who dove into this one who had such a good time playing it, and who have put it as amongst their favorite games that they've played. And this is one that I can't speak for them 100%, I can just say what they've said to some degree, but for me, this is the game I am still most looking forward to. This is the game I am still most excited to have show up. This is one that I absolutely want to sit down and play when I finally, I want to sit down and play this one. It was such a good game, it was such a good experience, and one that I'm very, very much looking forward to. And that's it. These are the 10 games that I have, or 12 games that I am the most looking forward to for the next time when someone pops onto my live stream and says, hey, which Kickstarter game are you most looking forward to? I'm going to pick one of these 12 and go with that. Probably Primal if I recall, but maybe for variety's sake I'll jump around, because these are all excellent games. And there are so many more. There's so many more out there. There are, again, a whole bunch that did not make the cut. Not because I'm not excited about them, just because I'm trying to fit too many games onto too small a list. But that's what we have this week. Some of these are available to late pledge, some not so much. I'm sure some will have second campaigns. I'm sure some you can pick up on the second-hand market. And I'm sure some will not be right for you as well. At the end of the day, however much I like a game, there's going to be someone who doesn't like that game. And depending on the game, there'll be more or less people who don't like that experience. These are all very, very good for me. Most of these are expensive, some a little less so, but games that I'm excited about. In any case, and until next time, I hope you enjoyed this video. And as always, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.